Securities offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through CWM, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Carson Partners, a division of CWM, LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors. This is The Way to Wealth, with host Scott Ford, a jiu-jitsu fighting, woodworking, beekeeping entrepreneur who is also the managing director, partner, and wealth advisor of Carson Wealth. Financial freedom is the goal, and clarity and simplicity is how we'll get there. Let's get to it. This is Way to Wealth.
Hello, and welcome back to the Way to Wealth podcast, where we're all about making money simple, allowing you to fully live and to fully live now. Super excited to have my dear friend and partner, Rich Christiansen, back on the podcast. Welcome back to the Way to Wealth podcast, my brother, Rich.
Oh, my brother, Scott, it's always good to be with you. I'll never turn down an invitation to do anything with you. So thanks for having me.
Of course, always, always. So for those of you who don't know Rich just a little bit, he's a best-selling author. He's a chair of a major university in Utah, mentor, thought leader. There's much I could say about Rich. I would say what he's most proudest of is part of what we want to talk about today. And I'll just take this right from one of his bios. The joy and gratitude Rich experiences in his life were made possible by learning how to embrace bond and build his family legacy. And so my point in sharing that is, one, it's timely about the subject we're going to talk about today. And two, it really is, to me, what I'm most impressed with what you've done in your life is what type of family you've built and how you've passed on this amazing legacy while you're still living. So wanted my audience to rehear that. So what we're going to talk about today is gratitude and happiness and how all this ties together. The Way to Wealth is our financial planning process. Of course, as an audience, you know that. And the purpose of that is so that you can live. Well, you know, my frame of living is health, wealth, wisdom, and happiness. So when you think about that, there's three things under each one of those pillars. And for me, and happiness is having healthy relationships, having a dream that you contribute to every day, and then being grateful. So that's the subject matter. And it's certainly, I couldn't think of anyone better to have on than my friend and brother, Rich, for so many reasons, but what I just said. And so let's start there, Rich. What's your thought on gratitude as we start, and how that ties to happiness?
Well, Scott, I think we've all met and been around downers, and that carries a certain energy with us. And when we're gratitude, I'm convinced, irrespective of your spiritual purview, gratitude is a key part of it, whether it's a Hindu or a Christian or a Buddhist or a Jewish, Muslim, whatever the faith is, gratitude is a center, pivotal piece of it. And furthermore, what I've discovered is when I'm grateful and I put my heart out gratefully, it returns very abundantly. So I think that, just this whole concept of abundance and gratitude is the fuel that actually drives this entire machine. It's really what drives our entire development and our progression is first of all showing acts of love, and second of all being grateful for that which has been bestowed upon us. I mean, how long are you going to last, Scott, without sniffing some air in, And yet we just take it for granted. Most of the time, I was just down walking in the river bottoms and all these little flowers busting out and the little ears of corn. We just take it for granted, but we have so much to be grateful for, even in hard times.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What practices, if any, do you use? Mine, just a few. Certainly, I have my morning routine, and part of my morning routine at the end of my meditation is three things that I'm grateful for just in that moment. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be the breath that I'm breathing, or it could be a relationship, or it could be a meeting I just had. Whatever it is, it could be very small or it could be big, but that's a habit or routine that I put in to be intentional about gratitude. And then for me, food, it gives an opportunity. And I was raised in a very religious family, so was raised giving thanks for the food that way. And now that I'm older and have embraced my own spirituality and form of that, and form of religion and spirituality, I just am thankful for my food, recognizing that whether it's a plant or an animal or whatever I'm about to consume, something gave its life and someone tended to that and someone gave care and love to that. And there was a lot that went into that. And just having a moment to recognize that, that food's going to be a part of me, that so that I can continue on in life and it can join me in this journey. I just pause in a moment of gratitude. So that they're two of my practices. What practices do you have to be intentional about gratitude?
Such beautiful concept, Scott. The fun thing of talking to you is every time you say something, I could go like 15 different directions because you're so darn deep. If I could just quickly comment a few of the practices that I go through, and I think everyone has to get their own gratitude practices, and it really is a healthy, happy, thing. One of the key things that we do is we do pray. First thing I do in the morning when I get out of bed is I do drop to my knees and I pray individually and with my wife. That's the beginning and the end of my day. Equally also over food. And what I've found is it puts me in a much more abundant mindset. It calms my mind and it gives clarity and puts me, first of all, in a service mode and also a gratitude mode. So practice of prayer has always been a critical part of my life. A new part, very similar to yours, Scott, is the concept of breath work and meditation, and that's now become a very important part and practice of my life. And in the breath, even as I slow it down and follow my breath, being grateful for the breath and being deliberate because the breath actually kind of is the source that then follows what's happening through my day. And then additionally, our family has this really fun little thing we've done for years is what's the peach, what's the pit, and what's the funny. So every day as we get to, and we do also pray over our food when we're together. We have a lot of praying in our family, which has been a really fun tradition. I know it seems like outdated, constraining. I haven't found that. As a matter of fact, I found it quite opposite. I found a heart-opening, communicative way, particularly when my kids were teenagers. You can't say, you need to do this, but if you're praying over them and bless Nathan, help him to have a good day, help him to have the experiences he needs to overcome this, then you can say things in the form of prayer you just couldn't otherwise. So prayer is a key one. I wanted to quickly go back to this other practice, though. So fun with the kids, and I do it even with my grandkids now, is end of the day as you're gathering around over dinner or sitting there saying, okay, what was the peach? What was the real jewel, the really fun thing that happened? What was the pit? What was the hard thing that happened of the day? And acknowledge and look at that. Don't dismiss it. And then what was the funny? What was the silly funny? My wife and I still do it nearly every day. My son does it. He's in Georgia right now doing some service, and every week in his letter, it's the peach, the pit, and the funny. So I think that those are really, really kind of some fun things, but I think everyone has to find their own way to show gratitude.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it doesn't surprise me. I knew you would have your traditions, already knew some of them, but I learned some more. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I had one question, then I want to talk a little bit about Legado and the work that we're doing together and the work that you really have brought with what you've done with your family that you're now sharing with the world, because it ties into gratitude. I opened with that in your bio. Before I get there though, happiness. I know you actually were interviewed not long ago on a series about happiness and would love to know your thoughts about happiness. So two things that I'll share on that. One is, you look at the founding of this country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I know I've heard that said, we're a little out of kilter right out of the gate if you're pursuing happiness, because there's no such thing as chasing a horizon you never get to. You can't pursue it, you can be it. And I actually agree with that. The thing about that, though, I believe that word, if you really look at the root of what they meant by pursue, it's really what they meant. So where we define it now is you're chasing it. That's actually not what they meant. So I do think they meant, to be happy. So I would love to know your thought of happiness and some of the, maybe, I guess, thoughts or things you shared in the interview on that that recent happiness project.
Such a deep, good question. And again, I kind of hate the word pursue happiness, and I kind of love the word pursue. Because I think one of the challenges that we face right now, Scott, is I'm entitled to happiness. And my belief is happiness is a choice. We get to choose happiness. We even get to choose the funnies in the really hard time. As you're aware, we just got through burying a grandchild. It may be the hardest thing that I've ever been through is burying this precious little grandchild. We mourn not only the loss of the grandchild, but also the fact that our son and daughter-in-law were having to go through that. So it was very, very difficult. That was not happy per se, but it was grateful, and we chose to live in happiness despite that. And so I think that we've got to be really careful when we expect we're owed happiness, or if I get that car, or I get that thing, or you do that, that makes me happiness. And as you know, things never make us happy. I am a remarkable individual. It feels so good to say that. I'm a remarkable individual, and I love myself, and I didn't till a couple of years ago when I went through this deep work. But what makes me happy and the thing that makes me remarkable is not the best-selling book or the businesses that I've created. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with the mild wealth that I've accumulated. I'm not the richest guy in the room of most of our network, but many of my friends want to be me. Why? It's one thing to get a successful business. It's another to accumulate wealth. Those are actually not that hard. What's really hard is, can you do it without screwing your life all up, getting crazy addictions, getting looped into stuff that's really destructive mindsets and thing. And not that I haven't done maybe a little of that, but mostly not. But then the big question is you can you do that and then have people around you that you love and stay in a committed relationship, and actually your kids not hate you to death? And that's tricky. That's really, really tricky. And Scott, it's why I fell in love with you, was this beautiful concept of the infinitepreneur, of living, family in balance, personal life in balance, health in balance, business in balance, wealth in balance, and maintaining a state of flow with the ups and downs that go along with it, but not this, your infinitepreneur contrast to my wealth continuum of taking and dropping off a cliff and then climbing back up, dropping off a cliff. So this beautiful concept of living in balance and in flow in personal life and wealth life, I think that's the jam. That's what we're going for, and that's truly the ultimate source of happiness, is going through these wild little rides in life, but not falling off cliffs and dying in the process.
Yeah, totally agree. And when I think of wealth, of the definition, I shared this with you not long ago, and it's like the definition. I actually learned this from James Hughes, who I'm going to have on the podcast here at the end of this month, retired attorney that has done some of this kind of work. How do you leave legacies for generations? And he was more on the agreement side as an attorney, but also did some of this work. So he's going to love seeing what you have put together and I've been a part of. The definition he gave for wealth, I've been saying, but in my own verbiage for years, people come to me for, how do I get financially independent or economically independent? You have more income passively coming in than your expenses. All right, I'm free. And that's what they come to us for. The process, the way to wealth is designed to do that. But I would always say, great. Here's how this can work. Literally, the way to wealth is so good, I can get you to $1 billion in like 12 months. Sound good? And everyone's like, are you kidding me? Yes, sign me up. And you're going to have unfulfilled, miserable relationships, marginal, probably ill health, and you're going to feel completely unfulfilled. Still want it? No, that's not what I signed up for. Exactly. So you really don't want that kind of wealth. And so his definition of wealth, tracing it all back to the Latin and the root word, was we all, W-E-O-L. We all stood for wealth. And that we all definition was sense of well-being. Yeah. And I'm like, I've been saying it in my own words for years. Like, that's what we're all after, is this, and I even say overwhelming sense of well-being in all these facets of life. That's what we're after.
I couldn't agree more, Scott. You articulated that so well, but I think that really is what we go for with our financial resources, is to provide a platform of stability that then, not taking the ups and downs away, but a platform of stability that then allows our posterity, our children, our grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren to fully manifest who they and what they really are. And that it means not only just financially, because that's the easy part. It's spiritually, it's emotionally, it's mentally. That's real wealth, is having a stable platform. And I think why this Legado platform that we put together is so darn powerful, as it provides an infrastructure to actually do that. The interesting thing is it's not new concepts. It's just a lost art. I mean, in the Industrial Revolution, when we kind of moved to the cities and mom and dad started going away, I mean, gosh, go back and look at the clans and their symbols, the Scotsman wearing what plaid you have, and everyone had symbols. They knew what tribes they were from. And so a lot of this isn't new. It just is really a lost art. Even the concepts of everyone gets so excited of these rites of passage that we put in place. It's the bomb. But it's like, man, rites of passage have been in place from the day of civilization. We just lost the art, Yeah,
100%. But you brought it back. That's the beauty of it. And I agree. That's exactly right. It's not new. It's remembering what was, and that's what you've done, which is what's so beautiful. Let's talk some about that, Rich. So let's talk some about Legado and the why behind it, and then some of the how behind it.
Great. Probably, Scott, it's worth me just backing up a little bit of how would it be of value to talk how it came to fruition?
100%, yes.
So my wife and I married my true love. I can't believe I managed to convince this woman to marry me. And we both came from very humble backgrounds. When we got married, we had $500 in the Dodge Colt that had been totaled 3 times. Our weekly food budget was $12 per week. And we lived on potatoes and loved the first couple of 2 years of our marriage. Early on in my career, I was given incredible opportunity, and I kind of got tapped by my still mentor, and it was obvious I was going to have some pretty good success in life. About 6 or 7 years into our marriage, I was earning more than my father at the end of his career and my wife's father at the end of his career. It so terrified my wife and I that we concluded to go move to a very poor neighborhood and to not tell our children that we were accumulating any wealth, because we did not want them to grow up entitled and all these drug addiction problems and all this garbage you see when parents overfuel and don't handle the wealth properly. So we lived in that environment for a year or two, and then I had a friend that came to me and said, "Rich, this is the stupidest plan we've ever seen in my life, because first of all, you are not going to pull off this ruse. But if you do pull it off, then what's going to happen when you die? If you don't screw your children up, which you most certainly will, you'll manage to completely destroy your grandchildren, because they're not going to know how to handle any of this wealth." And keeping in mind, it wasn't even that much wealth. It was just like I was doing okay at that point. And it so disheveled my wife and I that we went into massive depression. And so I went on this hardcore research looking for a model that would support us in like how we stabilize our family. And what I discovered was a lot of financial models. There were a lot of financial models of how to build trusts and how to stabilize your wealth and how to not get taxed, and some really interesting stuff there, but I couldn't find anything on how to not raise entitled kids and so on and so forth. So true to every entrepreneur, my wife and I created our own model. We came up with our own structure, which has now kind of become the platform of Legado. However, we refused to tell anyone. We didn't talk about it because I didn't know if it would work or not. As our children started to grow, it was very evident that something was going on. It was actually just, I know we all feel that way as you feel about your children. I feel about my children, but they were turning into remarkable individuals. There was no entitlement. They were building businesses. They were having incredible impact. They were getting straight A's. They were kind. They weren't caught up in all the noise. They weren't stuck to their cell phone. We weren't having to have all these hard conversations that most parents were having. And a lot of people started saying, "Rich, what are you doing?" And bit by bit, it kind of started leaking out a little bit to the point that I got a lot of demand. Even when I was doing my bootstrap and my zigzag presentations, what people really wanted to know was this backstory of the family. So bit by bit, it kind of got pulled out from me, went to MIT's Gathering the Titan, and that kind of opened the mushroom cloud. But still, I'd say, I don't know if this is going to work until my grandkids are raised. Then about 2 years ago, I had a remarkable spiritual deep experience where I was basically told, God basically said, you've got to now bring this forward. And so much to my chagrin, I have. And that's indeed how the Legado platform came forward, Scott, is it's this infrastructure that we use to raise our family. Since that point, we've been teaching it to a lot of very wealthy, a lot of very influential individuals. We've taught it in a number of groups and seminars, and it's the thing that's so delightful. The impact that it had in my family, it's even went more rapid and like wildfire. It's like throwing, gas on gasoline in a very good way with these families, instantly providing stability, insight, and confidence of how to move forward without messing your families up. One of my biggest regrets, and then I'll shut up on this topic, is that. Well, it's not a regret, it's just reality that the wealthy families oftentimes really gravitate because they've got such sincere, difficult, challenging problems that they're having to face because they've dropped a little too far into the gravity well. And one of my regrets a little bit is my zigzag principle and bootstrap fueled the problem a little bit and taught people how to over-amp it and not get this balance of real happiness in their life. And so one of my goals, I think, with Legado is to get this to early stage entrepreneurs so that they can avoid the big hairy hairball problems, Scott, that you see and I know and we deeply see with the wealthy, and just avoid the drop into the hell trap altogether.
Yeah. Well, you actually were, you stated exactly where I was going to head, Rich, and that is, well, first of all, thank you for sharing. It's beautiful as always. And one of the beauties of this work, as it ties to the infinite entrepreneur, that's what came to me was, this is the starting point. So if you think of the infinite entrepreneur as an infinity symbol, which it is, what better place to start than this kind of work at the family where you get clear and aligned and congruent as a family? Then you can go to your business on how do you make that sustainable? And it's the 4 Ps of a sustainable business. Then you can talk about the money, how it should operate cleanly in the business, how it should operate cleanly in the personal. And then you can live life of health, wealth, wisdom, and happiness with the best starting point is Legado. So you just said it. And what better place to start some of these entrepreneurs early where, candidly most don't, but what better place to start? So I couldn't agree with that more. Talk some about the structure, since you shared the backstory, which was great, and the why behind it. What's the actual structure families could think about?
I'd love to do that, but I want to pile on just a little bit more of your concept because we see it in the back end when it gets really problematic. But it really is the easy hard versus the hard easy. Because if you get the family structure and if you get the structure in place, you don't end up with divorce. You don't end up with your kids all in drug rehab. You don't end up with just the fractured money and the nightmares when it does happen. You end up with this stable support system. And indeed, that's been the biggest blessing of my life that I think that led to a lot of my success is having this stable support. So it really is the ultimate easy hard versus hard easy rather than racing and then having to deal with all the nonsense on the back end. Okay, so the structure. I'll zip through this and you can slow me down or speed me up. But
sure.
the platform, Scott, really does start with very clearly defining what your values are in your family. For me, my wife and I, non-entitlement was critical. Having a family of love, having a family of laughter, of hard work and work ethic, getting very clear on what your values are. If you don't know what your values are, the world will define them for your kids. And that's much of the challenge we're facing now is it defines for you. So we run through a bunch of exercises, really fun exercises. I'd had to get really clear on what's the platform the stable platform of values that you're standing for. Until we get that, we can go bolt these things I'm going to talk about here in a second on, but it's like, it's not stable if you do that. You just got these fun little like trinkets, these fun little widgets you bolted onto your bike. So getting really clear on the values is the platform. And once you understand those, there's another very interesting, maybe more important aspect, and that is what values are not serving your family well. Which ones do you throw away? Most families have some garbage that's been passed on, tradition, tradition. We've just got these traditions that come down, and sometimes they're not good. And so, a lot of the millennials just have thrown everything. It's like, I'm done with religion. I'm done with conventional wisdom. That's really stupid to throw hundreds of thousands of years of learned wisdom in the garbage can. But their gripe is correct and true, Scott, that some of the things aren't correct. Our family used guilt, shame, and scarcity like peanut butter, jam, and pieces of bread. And my wife and I very deliberately decided and even had a defining document. We'll talk about the documents here in a second, that threw away guilt and shame as motivators in our family. And anyone in our family that tries using it are called out on it. So values, and then what values are not serving you well do you throw in the garbage can? So it starts with values, Scott.
What's next after values? And by the way, of course, but the audience may not remember, I've been through this. So Angie and I literally went through 2 days of this magical experience with Rich facilitating. And it's two of candidly the most powerful days we've had in our marriage, as far as just focused, true, transparent time to really spend time on this super meaningful content.
All right, so now we plant the pillars on top, the sexy stuff. This is the stuff that people really love to do. It's really, really fun, really exciting. I just got back from doing one with one of our dear friends, and oh my gosh, eyes light up and sparkle, and here's what it is. The first one is symbols. What symbol? Do you have a family logo? Do you have a family mascot? Do you know what your spirit animal is and your spouse's spirit animal? And then equally, what is their sulky animal or their anti-persona, if you will. So, I'm feeling a little bit sad, and understand and use that as a buffer. What color do each of your children manifest and show up in to represent? That alone gives, I'm seen and I'm part of a tribe. And we as humans, we are so hardcore wired to this, we can't help ourselves. You cannot help from doing it. And most of your kids, or our kids and ourselves, are all doing this already. If I wear an LA Laker logo and it's on green, I've got a major problem going on. Just show up to a football game in the wrong color and watch people throw popcorn and soda pop at you, or beer can. Seriously. The Bloods have it. The Crips have it. Everybody has this symbology to identify what tribe or what group they belong to. If you drive a Subaru, it says something about you, for better or for worse. People will identify, versus a Lexus or a BMW. They identify differently just by a logo and a brand. So branding and logoing and symbolizing your family and creating deep symbology around I'm wearing the Legado. Yep. On that, we got our little flame. Scott, we both know what that means. I'm a mountain gorilla today. I walk out with my little lizard, and my wife pats me on the head and treats me very differently than when I wear my mountain gorilla. So giving your kids color and context, you give them gifts in that. Oh my gosh. Watch your kids and your grandkids' eyes light up as you show them symbology.
Yes.
I know we've done this. You want me to show my symbol quickly,
please.
Scott?
Yes,
right,
please.
That's our family symbol. My wife in the middle in white. I surround her in black. We go on forever in circles in eternity. And then our kids each pick their color, pointing inward, having each other's backs. When the kids get married, my sons get married, they then circle their wife, surround them in white. And then those little ticks, those little inward pointing, are the grandkids. Every one of my grandkids know where they belong. They point and say, Everly, Joseph, Grandpa will point to Grandpa, and they know that they belong, and it deeply matters. My little daughter-in-laws, they'll touch their symbol when they get married. We give them a family oath. They come in, we give them a piece of jewelry. It's one of the most prized possessions they have, is this piece of jewelry. So symbols are so important to identify that we belong to a tribe, Scott. And again, if we don't do it, somebody else will do it. So the first leg is the symbols. The second pillar is the doctrine. And this can be really fun. Do you have a family song? Yeah, a family song. Go create a family ballad. Do you have a family slogan, a family oath, a family motto? Live strong, die hard, defenders of the faith. We have a family mission statement. This was actually the first piece of our framework. It's hung on our wall, and I got to tell you, it didn't require a lot of us micromanaging our kids because they knew the governing doctrine. And so it's basically, this is how we operate. This is what we behave like. In your business, you most certainly have, like a mission statement or a value statement. You have that in your business, but have you thought to do that in your family? So once you got the values, then the definition of how you engage and what's expected of you and the standard bearing is this doctrine statements. And it can be really fun. It doesn't need to be quite as stuffy as like a family mission statement makes it sound. But as soon as you've kind of defined that and hung that on the wall, 9/10 of your problems just went away in your family, particularly with teenagers.
Yes. So values, symbols, doctrine.
Number 3 is traditions. And I break this into 2 pieces. It's the cadences, the quick little cadences. It's actually where we started. What's your practice for gratitude? Well, a prayer is really good. What are the things that you do to return back to your tribe and make you feel a part? I mean, watch your favorite basketball or football team and watch what they do before every game. And that's pretty going to be tradition that, hey, I'm part of it. And they're crazy. Some of them are really interesting. Universities have really interesting little cadences. The clubs, all of the Greek clubs, they have very interesting little traditions. Some of them good, not good. Certainly the Bloods, Crips, M13, they have some very interesting cadences of tradition. I'm not sure that you want your kids going out and killing someone when they're 13 to be induced into the tribe, but you should certainly be having, some really little cadences of tradition in there. So the quick daily cadences, which is things like very deliberate and like a prayer, or asking the funny of the day, or driving them to school and turning on the radio and singing together, reading your grandchildren bedtime books. Try putting them to bed once you've done that and miss, and watch what happens. Yeah. So these little cadences are important, but equally, if not more important, are the really kind of the special things, the really very deep special things, like what do you do on Christmas morning? What do you do for Thanksgiving dinner? Try changing Aunt Mabel's god-awful cranberry recipe and watch the family all erupt, because why? Tradition, we've got a tradition. Yep. Don't want to mess with your tradition. So the third piece is getting very specific, very deliberate on what your traditions are in your family.
Yes, perfect. So values, symbols, doctrine, traditions, and then the last piece, I know what is coming, but I'll let you share.
It's the bomb, and I totally rocked this one out of the world. Really, really fun. This is the rites of passage. So I call this the epoxy cement that you pour this on in your family. It does not come undone. It cannot come undone. It's so cemented so fast that that what you learn out of that is cemented forever. So, in the past, I've always told mine, so I can do that quickly if you'd like, or I could share a few of the ones that I have other people are now implementing.
Yeah, your preference, Rich. Yeah, but whatever you're most comfortable with.
Well, I'm going to let you pick. You've heard mine before. Do you want to hear? Would you prefer me to go through mine again, or some of the ones?
Yeah, do yours. Yours.
Okay, I'll do mine, and then I'll spray a few of the fun little ones that have come out in the recent trainings. So I really believe that critical ages that children's minds develop, and the first is 8. That's actually when the brain closes and when they start making conscious choice for themselves. So 8 is a critical age. 12 is another critical age. That's when you start entering puberty and become a young man or young woman. 14 is the age that kids actually start making choice, life decisions, and direction. It's not 16, it's 14. 16 is when you start picking a career path, and then 18 is when you formally kind of kill mom and dad and you become your own man or woman. So we put a rite of passage at each of these dates. And again, mine should not be yours, but I would encourage you to seriously look at those ages, because they really are the impact ages. So here's ours quickly. 8 years old, 8 is great date. First time our kid gets to pick where they truly want to go to dinner. So we go to dinner, typically something greasy and really disgusting. But then we get done and we go privately and we open a dialogue on all the hard conversations. And we never end that dialogue, actually, but we talk openly about sex, about drugs, about bullying, about the use of technology, and just start a really open, direct dialogue. Typically, midway through the discussion, my wife is a nurse and she'll have her anatomy books out. My kids will say, "That's enough, Mom." And okay, then we back it off. But nonetheless, we go all the way there with the kids. So 8 is the discussion of open accountability and hitting what the pitfalls in life are. 12 years old is non-entitlement trip. I'll take each of my sons away for 3 weeks. And yes, I know it's overbaked, but I did not want to dork my kids up, and so I overbaked it. And you don't have to go this extreme, but what we do is I take them to a third world country for 3 weeks. The first week is some grand, mind-numbing adventure. It's climbing on the Great Wall of China, or going to the Pokemon Center in Japan, or going to the Taj Mahal, or seeing camels and elephants run down the street in Mumbai. It's a pretty significant life event. That's first week. Second week, adventure so much that most adults haven't done it. So deeply bonding with my sons and just laughing and creating memories that will never come undone. Week 2 is in a Mother Teresa orphanage, or my favorite was in Nepal, when we would hold the little lost girls, the little rescued girls, 100,000 little young women that are rescued out of the dowry system, where they were going to have their organs harvested and sold into China and India. That's where most of the organs come from for those countries, or sold into sexual slavery. After a week of serving these little girls and touching humanity, there's no entitlement left in that 12-year-old. The final week, we come back very slowly and we talk about what does it mean to be a Christiansen man. And in our family, it's to protect, to provide safe space and hold the space for women so they can live in their power, and then fix a lot of stuff. And so that becomes the context of what does it mean to be a Christiansen man. I have all 5 sons. I didn't have daughters. So this was son-related. And yes, it was me alone with my sons talking about being a man. From that point forward, it doesn't matter what we're doing. Out mowing the lawn, fixing dad. Going to work, providing dad. It gives context of who and what they are. And those kids come back 30 years old, not one drop of entitlement has been in any of my sons from day one. My biggest gripe with them, quite frankly, is even now I can't get them to pick up their cell phones for me. So solves so many of the problems that trip. 14-year-old trip, that is private victories, not public victories, and being able to do very hard things in private. So each one of my sons have stared up the throat of Mount Everest, stood on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, climbed around Mont Blanc. We've stood on top of Huayna Picchu, which looks down on Machu Picchu. And every one of my sons went to the top of the mountain bawling. There's no pain like the exquisite pain above like 18,000 feet. I'm just saying. My youngest son actually wet himself going up the mountain, and I passed out 3 times. I caught him. What trust does that put into a father-son relationship? He gets to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Alex, sorry, I hope you don't mind me telling this story. And he'd wet himself. He'd been bawling for an hour. He gets on the top and he starts singing. He's a egg-laying mammal of action. Perry the platypus. And he starts singing Perry the platypus on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. and comes down that mountain as a man, having at 14 years old done something very hard, very private. And that kid, he's not quitting anything. None of my sons quit things because they know how to do hard things. And it's a private victory, not a public victory. My worst nightmare was my kid to throw the winning touchdown and be carried off the field on the shoulders of the players, because that's the definition of life. I want private victories, not public victories. So that's 14. 16, each of my sons shake my hand and commit that they'll never again ask for anything. But I helped them build a business, and at that point, they're responsible for paying for their own college, their own missions, even our family vacations, and saving for a car when they get back. So all three of my oldest sons all created $1 million businesses when they were in high school, hiring all of their friends. My two youngest opted not to do that. Timmy's had his all saved for by the age of 12, so he wanted to write a book. So Toes Turn Purple, he was a best-selling author at the age of 16. Toes Turn Purple, and my youngest son built a studio. He was done by the age of 9. So I don't have any concern of my children ever living in my basement. And they would literally be offended when I die giving an inheritance. They'd be offended at me doing that. They're going to add to it, and the money will be a stewardship to them. So I take accountability for their future. When they're 18, we shut the business down, give everything back to the charity, and then they go serve humanity deeply for 2 years, learning another language and living very, very humbly. When they come back, these kids are like 45 years old. And I mean, without, I can give a few. My oldest son, chief technology officer of $1 billion company. My second son, 2 homes paid off, just sold his second business after all of this. My third son, he just got a position that normally it's 15 years to get into that. Just amazing outcomes from having these kind of lead up philosophies in place. So those are the rites of passage we put in place. I did add one not too long ago, a couple of years back, of when they become young adults. I take them to a level 4 security prison, and for 2 days teach entrepreneurship and also fatherhood, and come out of that experience with 2 takeaways. First of all, son, I'm really sorry. I apologize for my generation, because we created all these terrible problems, the mess up in the prison systems, misogyny, we're screwing up the environment, political divide. Sorry about that. There's some big problems out there. You're responsible to go fix them now. Sorry about that. And the second is all of us make mistakes. You need a second chance. I need a second chance. We all need second chance. And none of us want to be held accountable for the worst thing that we've done. And most of those guys that we saw never even got a first chance. So let's go fix some of the big social problems. So those are the rites of passage, Scott, that we put in place. And yeah, they're kind of like mind-blowing. I can't believe that we did them myself. We did them with every kid. And yeah, it was epoxy cement on the values that will never come undone.
Yeah, amazing. And every time I hear it, Rich, it's absolutely fantastic. And it never makes me feel like, it makes me feel happy for you and your family. It makes me feel hopeful for my kids are grown, but there's grandkids. It makes me feel hopeful for what we can bring to other families from things learned. They can do this together. So it's just absolutely amazing. And when I think about this, so the final piece that I bring to the equation with Way to Wealth and the team is the structure. Obviously, in wealth management, one of our foundational bricks in the Way to Wealth is estate and legacy. Well, this is it. So what we can bring with legacy is the structure. What type of trust, what type of will, how do you set up a family bank? And here's what I say about that. We've been doing this for years and years. I've been doing this since 91. What most have done, and I heard this from James Hughes too, Jay Hughes as well, and he has his own 5 things, and the 5th is financial. So when you look at this, what most people see is, okay, you get your values, and then as Rich said, you have your symbols, you have your doctrine, you have your traditions, you have your rites of passage, and then you have your finances and structure. And that's what we bring, finances and structure. And when you get into the finances and structure, what we talk about is creating a family constitution, and specifically 7th generation family constitution. There's lots I could share about that, but the bottom line is this is all to me about taking ancient wisdom and pairing it with modern day times and technology and science. And really, it's what you've done, Rich. You've taken ancient wisdom or rites of passage and values and symbols and these things, and you brought it to the day to a family in a brilliant fashion. I'm doing the same thing with the family constitution, calling it 7th generation, because that's what the Iroquois Confederacy and the Native American tribes would do. Think, how's this decision going to affect 7 generations from now? So with all this in place, now we look at the finances in the family bank and put the family constitution based off all of this that's already been put in place. What I like to say, and I actually heard this from James Hughes, is let's flip it. So now all of a sudden, the structure of the family constitution, the finance piece, is set to fund and take care of and support the rites of passage, the traditions, the doctrines, the symbols, and the values. And that's such a beautiful way to look at this in my mind. Let's flip it, because what has happened recently in the last 100 years since the Industrial Revolution is this liquid asset thing is a new thing. There wasn't liquid assets hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They were leaving values and maybe land and how to hunt and traditions. And so instead of leaving that, let's start with this foundation, these important things beyond money that you can leave to the next generation. And the beauty of doing that is what Rich said. Then you don't need to leave the liquid assets. But even if you did, if they have this in place, they don't need it, which is what we all want. So the only other thing I'll add is you look at the Legado logo. You can see it behind me. You can see it better with Rich. But the D and the O, I like to explain it like this. The flame look is as the fuel. So the flame can be the finance piece and the fuel, that the bank that funds all this. The goal here is with the values, the symbols, the traditions, the doctrines, the rites of passage, passing this on now, formalizing it in a constitution so that when we're gone, that future generation can see and learn that on their own. That's the D coupled with the O. We're teaching them how to make their own fire with this. He taught his boys how to make fire. So if he were to choose to leave them liquid assets, it's not going to hurt them because they already knew how to make the kindling and how to make a spark and create their own fire. That's the missing ingredient. I think people are just dumping flames on the next generation, not knowing what else to do. And the next generation doesn't know anything about making the actual fire themselves. This is the missing ingredient in my mind, is you're teaching them how to do it. Then if you choose to leave or not actual liquid assets, you're not going to harm them.
So well articulated, Scott. And I just have to tell you how grateful I am. I know it's your podcast, but all you listeners, I mean, I looked at a lot of partners when I found Scott. I was so incredibly grateful because he brought the integrity to this, that there wasn't ulterior motives. And it's really the only individual I'm at all comfortable working with in regard to actually this coupling piece. And it's critical that you understand and get that structure right. And Scott does it in such a simple, straightforward way. It can be not only understood, but easily implemented. And I think exactly what you said, so many people that we know, they're terrified. Many are just giving their wealth away. Many times the kids just go lose it, and it's not stupidity. It was like it's not serving us. But when you get this right, there's no need. It just elevates the platform of impact. It just elevates the platform of impact that you get for posterities. I went from terrified on this topic, Scott, to now just down outright arrogant. What my kids are doing with my grandkids and what they'll do with theirs, it's like this will go on for generation upon generation upon generation upon generation, with each adding and having more impact for good, but having a stable platform to work from rather than just flinging an arrow at the moon and hoping it hits.
Yes. And so they'll either not do it, or they'll give it to charity, or they'll dump it and hurt their children, or they'll say, I'm not going to screw them up, so I'm going to give it all to charity. Well, depending on the charity, you're doing the same thing, because they didn't necessarily build the fire to make it either. So it's like, this is the solution. So I couldn't be more thankful. Speaking of gratitude, we'll bring this full circle. I couldn't be more grateful to be a part of this amazing work. I don't take credit for any of what's been developed here. We bring the structure piece. I'm just super grateful to be with someone with such integrity, have done the work. You know, it's one thing to talk about it, because I've heard similar concepts. You've done it, and the kids are now grown, and it's like, yep, it worked. And so no agenda, purity in your intent and what you've developed. So super grateful to be a part of that. And now with the Infinite Entrepreneur, this being the starting point, couldn't be a better starting point so if you've already started as a super successful entrepreneur out there, it's never too late. If you are just starting, oh my gosh, never a better time to focus on Legado. So I would say check out legadofamily.com, any of Rich's work. The only other question I guess I would ask you, Rich, as we wrap is people want to learn more about you. What's the best place to find you?
Oh, well, you're super kind, Scott. I think just Legado Family is where we're hanging out now. That's where I'm putting all my effort. And I know there are a lot of my thought leadership in the past I was really excited about. But quite frankly, it caused a lot of the problem. And so now we're fixing the problem. And I'm just so grateful to you, Scott. I'm grateful for this incredible ride we get. And I think we to bring it back full circle also is we just need to be so grateful for this experience called life. And sometimes we take it way too serious. We just need to enjoy even the hard moments and just be grateful for every single breath because it's pretty darn spectacular, even the down moments.
Well said, brother. So in closing, when you think of happiness and health, wealth, wisdom, and happiness, we talk about having healthy relationships, having a dream you contribute to, and being grateful. It's what we started the podcast on. And to me, Legado Family answers all three of those. So that's what really the process does, is it creates happiness, starting with families, those family relationships. It gives you a dream you can contribute to with your family, and it's something to be grateful for. So with that, thank you all for joining the Way to Wealth podcast, where we're all about making money simple so that you can focus on living life fully and doing that now, today. See you next week.
The opinions voiced in Way to Wealth with Scott Ford, Managing Director, Partner, and Wealth Advisor of Carson Wealth, are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on Way to Wealth are not affiliated with CWM LLC or Cetera Advisor Networks LLC. Legado Family is not affiliated with Cetera Advisor Networks LLC or CWM LLC. Carson Wealth, 19833 Leitersburg Pike, Suite 1, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742.